Hi, everyone. I hope you have all been enjoying Experiential Signage Day of Launch Week 12 so far. For our next session, it's going to be a fireside chat. I've brought Hillary McVicker on with me. Hillary, how are you, first of all?
Doing great stuff.
Good.
Glad to
I'm
be
glad to hear
here.
it. Gosh, we met, was it DSE like 2022 or something when we first met?
I feel like it's been a lot of ISC and Infocom in the mix, and they all sort of become a blur
That's true.
over the years.
No, that's
Blur of
absolutely fair.
signage and cool displays.
Yes, but the industry has changed a lot even in those few years that I've known you and gotten to know you and gotten to talk about the industry, so I thought it would be fun to have you on here and kind of talk about what's changing and where we're at right now. So, the first thing I wanted to talk to you about was since you've been in this industry a while, you've seen it kind of evolve from static screens where someone just puts a logo up and is like, there you go, here, call it a day. And now we've really kind of expanded and we're looking at immersive environments. So when you hear the word experiential, what does that mean to you? And how has that changed over time?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say it's definitely a buzzword. And so in different contexts, we're going to, define it sort of differently. But I wanted to look up at like an actual definition. So this is from SEGD, the Society of Experiential Graphic Design. And what they say is that experiential design is the practice of shaping spaces and environments to create inclusive, engaging, and meaningful experiences for people. It's a multidisciplinary field that moves beyond simply designing visuals to focus on how a space makes a person feel. And I think that really sums it up. It's multisensory, it's multidisciplinary, and it has to do with the audience being more actively involved. It's like something that you do. And that engagement is going to make a deeper impression because it does stimulate some kind of emotion, which then builds a connection with your place or your brand or your product, ideally a positive one. And so, the evolution, that multisensory aspect, obviously that's really supported by advances in technology that let us bring in, a 3D stereo, 3D audio, as well as compelling visuals and interactive interfaces. But the other evolution I see really is that it's in the use case, because it used to be something that some discrete experience like a concert or maybe an experiential marketing activation, like a pop-up that you go to and you do. But now I think we're seeing these experiential elements like everywhere we go. Hotel lobbies, airports, it's not just signage, is not just information. They have these beautiful immersive displays. Offices or customer experience and employee experience hubs. It's in retail, it's in public spaces. All these places are like you've got these super talented teams from Float 4 and Jean Talon and Moment Factory designing experiences that we just kind of walk past on our way to get coffee. And so it's almost expected now. So I guess that part of the evolution I see is just in this exponential growth of activations and use cases.
Absolutely. And I know you mentioned that experiential is kind of a buzzword, which is so fair, but sometimes I think digital signage is buzzwordy too. So, do you think that experiential signage is the best way to describe what we're trying to do in that space now, or do you think there's another term, or like what's the best way to you to describe what AV and signage can and should do when they're done right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do. I think it's different. Different goals are going to have different approaches, and I think signage can kind of fall into a few categories. Sometimes it is going to be pretty cut and dried. What time is my flight? I
Yeah.
mean, that obviously could also evoke some emotion if your flight is late, but
Right.
it's just getting information across. Also, sometimes the purpose is really around like monetization and using a space for revenue for ads and that kind of thing. But when the goal is to do this sort of almost non-tangible driver of business value, experiential is the way to go because it is going to evoke this I feel like we overuse the word experience and emotion in these conversations, but it's true. You really sort of evoke an emotional experience with that drives a connection, and that can also drive sort of the business forward.
That makes a lot of sense. I do think that there are a lot of companies out there that still kind of equate any type of signage with flashy technology and like we have to put all of this out there, the flashier the better. But I think that something that I believe in, something that you believe is that the best projects always start with a story and like what are you trying to tell people? What do you want people to take away from it? So, how do you think tech storytelling and technology can better complement each other in today's day and age?
Yeah, I thoroughly strongly believe in starting with the story. And I think that that is what, building the tech to support the story versus the other way around is what's going to differentiate purposeful use of these technologies from a gimmicky, flashy, let me just throw as much brightness and pixels as I can at people.
Yep.
I think when you put the solution and the overall experience over the tech, that's when you have success. And I also think that this is where collaboration really comes in. Like, what grabs you or not is the content, the story. And so when if hard, I was just at DSE and there was just so much conversation, great, inspiring conversation about collaboration and what makes it work and finding collaborators who are really good at what they do and working well together. And so, as far as the story goes, it can't be an afterthought. It's Thibaut Diverneau from Jean Talon said what I thought was a great thing. Content is not paint. It's not like something you just slap on
Yeah.
afterward.
No, that's fair.
It's yeah, if it's really going to be experiential, it's got to be like embedded in the design from the beginning, and thinking about things like the demographics and the audience behaviors and what your intended takeaway is from the beginning and making things work to serve that. I also I think that a really interesting aspect of this world these days is on the software side, the OS and CMS, and so you want to have that in mind from the beginning. And all of it again, it's just defined by the intention. Like, are we just imparting information, or is this about like beauty and wow and cool and what's the association? And that is the story.
You you did mention that it was important to find a good collaborator and really focus on that partnership. And a lot of times this collaboration involves both people in creative roles and people in really technical roles in order for it to really work. So what are you seeing as like the biggest tension points right now when you take two of those people from those two very different corners when those two sides do need to collaborate on a project?
Yeah, well, I think, I'm huge on communication, and I think that that is really the key. Getting on the same page from the beginning and staying on the same page regularly, communicating. But really, it's that the first page is the important page and making sure everyone's kind of aligned on the vision for the overall experience. Because, if we are starting with story and this is a narrative driven experience, everybody's on that page, and maybe the tech side needs to flex to accommodate that. But on the flip side, it has to work, it has to perform, it has to meet budget. So the creative side also may need to flex to accommodate the technical side. So just I really do think keeping that communication open to serve the end goal is key. And I would also say I was hearing a lot at DSE about designing for not just day one, but day two and beyond. And so it's not just like this amazing thing that you launch and then it's done. You want to consider longevity and updates and keeping content evergreen, and how is that going to work on the technical side. So I think factoring all that into the design from the beginning,
Mhm.
and the budget. Obviously, the budget is going to be a huge,
Yeah.
could be even the point where there's a tension point, or could also, if done well, support real creative collaboration. And that one other thing I would say is that I think there's more overlap between the creative and technical teams these days. Like, you have really creative people who are also very technical. Years ago, I was on a panel with Mark Stolzman from Area 15, and he said, your dev team is your content team, and invest in that. And I just thought that was really forward thinking and seeing where we are today.
Absolutely. Has the conversation around data changed at all to you lately? Are designers having to think more about metrics and audience behavior when they're designing content, or is that still mostly left to the marketing and the operational team?
Definitely. I think data driven is like the word of that you're hearing a lot these days.
Mhm.
And it's another overlap between the technical and the creative sides. It's, we have the opportunity to create this dynamic content that's based on data and analytics, and it takes like know your audience to a whole other level. That's another great talk at DSU with Sam Phoenix and Layla Jensen, and they were talking about retail and how these larger clients obviously are using eye tracking, sales data, A/B testing, exit interviews, and they're
Yep.
really optimizing the experiences. And so, in my opinion, that's a pretty that can really drive an effective signage based experience. And then I would also say, so using IoT, incorporating sensors and then software to gather data like in real time and then feed that into dashboards that then make signage responsive. I feel like that's a very interesting way that things are headed. This is something I would quote Paul McConnell, who heads up Noble, the company that I'm working with. Paul was saying, let's look to the software industry to sort of guide us because it's based on measurements and feedback, and they're like pushing new code based on user feedback constantly. And we don't see that so much in the built environment, but that's where we should be heading and evolving.
When it comes to today's type of audiences, when you look at how they interact with digital environments today, are there any behaviors or expectations that are kind of surprising to you?
Yeah, maybe this is generational, but I think especially younger audiences are they're so participatory, they're so comfortable, being part of the data feedbacks. Interestingly, on the retail side, Ariel Harouche from Future Stores at DSU was talking about how they designed the fitting rooms as like they're going to be used as a broadcast studio, and it's brilliant and it's
Mhm.
true, and that's amazing marketing for the brands. But it's like the last thing I would ever do, So it's just I think different behaviors for different generations and expectations. It's just watching that evolve as well.
No, absolutely. So I think we have time for like one more question. So I think that last question should be, how would you describe the state of experiential signage in like one or two words right now, and why?
I would say it's popping. It's
Poppin'.
really
Love.
it's popping. It's really great to see technology evolve to the point where we can just get really creative and leverage these technologies, to go from what could just be like wallpaper and TVs and instead create really moving, inclusive experiences.
That I think that is the perfect way to end it. So Hillary, thank you so much for your time. Actual last question is, where can people find more about you online? Where can they go to contact you, add you, etc.?
Sure. Well, I'm active on LinkedIn, and also I would love to send people to Noble's website, which is gonoble.io. Noble, doing experience design and strategy, has some really interesting perspectives on the industry, connecting the built environment and the digital world. So check us out, and please reach out anytime. It's hillary.mcvicker@gonoble.io, and we'll talk.
Cool. Hillary, thank you so much. Thanks for being part of Launch Week 12.
Thanks, Steph. Really appreciate it.